It was one of those days that felt ordinary, a typical Tuesday morning. Skies partly cloudy, travelers bustling through JFK International Airport. Among the many passengers, 17-year-old Malik Johnson waited at Gate 14 with a tattered backpack and a boarding pass for a flight to Los Angeles. He wasn't a frequent flyer. In fact, this was only the second flight of his life. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear of flying, but from the weight of why he was flying. His mother had saved up for months to get him a one-way ticket. He was going to California to audition for a music program he'd only dreamed of joining. For Malik, this wasn't just a trip. It was hope. As he looked around the gate, his eyes locked onto a woman who clearly didn't belong among the regular crowd. She was dressed in an elegant beige trench coat, with a leather purse that probably cost more than Malik's family car. Her blonde hair was tied back, and she looked visibly pregnant. The woman was accompanied by a quiet older gentleman, possibly a security detail or personal assistant. Malik thought nothing more of it and went back to the worn pages of his songwriting journal. The flight boarded without issue. Malik took his seat in the back of the plane, window seat, headphones on, music low. He closed his eyes and pictured himself on stage, spotlights glaring, a crowd cheering. He didn't notice the same pregnant woman taking her seat just 5 rows ahead. She had requested privacy and the airline had made accommodations. Business class was full, but the airline offered her and her assistant seats near the front of the economy cabin with an empty row for space. About 90 minutes into the flight, turbulence rocked the plane lightly. Malik opened his eyes, but wasn't alarmed. He was too busy daydreaming about guitar solos and melodies. Then a voice pierced the cabin, tense and shaky. It was the flight attendant's voice over the intercom, asking if there was a medical professional on board. That woke everyone up. The woman in the beige coat was now groaning, clearly in distress. Her face was pale, sweat beading along her hairline. The assistant beside her stood up and shouted for help, panic overtaking his composed demeanor. The pregnant woman was going into labor, and it was too early. Malik stood up instinctively, though he didn't know what he could do. He wasn't a doctor, not even close. But something in him told him to move. He pushed past a few seats and made his way toward the commotion. The flight attendants were trying to remain calm, gathering towels, water, and anything else they could find in the emergency kits. But they looked unsure. Malik overheard them whispering that they hadn't had any childbirth training beyond basic first aid. No one else on the plane claimed to be a doctor. He looked at the woman. She was panting, scared, and holding her belly tightly. Her assistant looked completely helpless. Malik stepped closer and said softly, "I know I'm just a kid, but my mom's a nurse. I've helped her before." At first, the flight attendants hesitated, but with no better option, they nodded. Time was running out. Malik remembered everything his mom had taught him. She worked long shifts at a public hospital in Brooklyn and often brought her work home, talking Malik through procedures and situations. He never thought he'd have to use that knowledge at 30,000 feet, but here he was. He kneeled beside the woman, introduced himself, and asked her name. Her voice was faint. "Amanda." "Okay, Amanda, I need you to breathe with me," he said calmly. He reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "You're doing great. Just breathe in and out." Amanda looked at him, her eyes wide with pain and fear, but she nodded. The flight attendants helped create a makeshift privacy curtain using blankets. Malik positioned Amanda as best as he could with help from the assistant. Her contractions were coming fast. The baby was not going to wait for the plane to land. Malik instructed the crew to radio the cockpit to inform them of the emergency. They needed to land as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Amanda's labor intensified. Malik wiped her forehead with a cloth, held her hand tightly, and kept speaking softly. To her. He reminded her to focus on her breathing, to stay with him. The rest of the cabin sat in silence, stunned by the young man who had stepped in with calmness far beyond his years. After what felt like forever but was probably 15 minutes, the baby started to crown. Malik told Amanda she was almost there. "Just one more push," he said, and with a cry that echoed through the cabin, a tiny baby entered the world mid-flight. Malik caught the baby carefully, checking to make sure it was breathing. A few tense seconds passed before the baby let out a strong wail. A girl. The cabin broke into applause. Amanda sobbed with relief, reaching for her child. Malik wrapped the baby in warm towels, placed her gently on Amanda's chest, and stepped back, his hands shaking now. He had done it. He had helped bring a life into the world, high above the ground. The plane made an emergency landing in Denver, where paramedics rushed on board. Amanda and the baby were taken off first. Before being wheeled out, Amanda looked back at Malik. She whispered something to a paramedic who turned and nodded at Malik. The passengers clapped again, many of them in tears. Malik, still processing everything, sat down quietly in his seat, too overwhelmed to speak. He didn't even realize the assistant had stayed behind to give the paramedics Amanda's information. The flight resumed after an hour, and Malik finally landed in Los Angeles. As he stepped off the plane, exhausted and emotionally drained, a man in a sharp suit approached him. "You Malik Johnson?" the man asked. Malik hesitated. "Yeah?" The man handed him a card. "You're invited to the West Coast Music Foundation showcase next week." A spot just opened up. Malik's eyes widened. He hadn't even auditioned yet. "How do you know who I am?" The man smiled. "Let's just say someone influential was very grateful. Good luck, kid." Over the next few days, Malik's story went viral. Someone on the flight had filmed parts of the emergency delivery and posted it online. Headlines everywhere read, "Teen hero delivers baby mid-air or black. Teen saves millionaire's wife in emergency birth." Malik's phone blew up with interview, requests and messages from strangers calling him a hero. But he wasn't concerned with fame. He was focused on the showcase. A week later, as he prepared to walk on stage with his guitar at the West Coast Music Foundation event, he was still thinking about Amanda and her baby. He hadn't heard from them. Part of him wondered if he ever would. Then, just before his name was called, someone approached him backstage. It was the assistant from the flight. "You've got a visitor," he said. Amanda stepped forward, holding a tiny baby girl wrapped in a soft pink blanket. She looked healthier now, glowing with peace. Malik's eyes widened. "You're okay." "And the baby?" Amanda smiled. "Perfect. Thanks to you. I never got to thank you properly. I want you to meet Hope. That's what I named her. Because that's what you gave us that day." Malik choked up. He reached out to touch the baby's tiny hand. Amanda continued. "I need to tell you something. I'm not just Amanda. My full name is Amanda Prescott. My husband is Daniel Prescott." Malik blinked. "The Daniel Prescott? Tech billionaire? Philanthropist? Founder of Dynex?" Amanda nodded. "Daniel's the love of my life. And our daughter was born because you didn't freeze when others did. You stayed. You saved us." She handed Malik an envelope. It had only a few words written on it. "Open after your performance." Malik was stunned but nodded. Amanda hugged him and stepped back. He walked on stage with fire in his chest. He poured every ounce of emotion into his performance. When the final note rang out, the room gave him a standing ovation. Backstage, he opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dear Malik, you saved my wife and child, and no amount of money will ever repay that. But I'd like to try. Enclosed is a full scholarship to the music school of your choice, and when you're ready, a recording contract awaits you under our foundation label. We don't just want to thank you. We want the world to hear you. Forever grateful, Daniel Prescott." Malik stood frozen, tears filling his eyes. He had flown across the country chasing a dream. He never expected to find purpose, family, and a miracle along the way. From that day forward, Malik's life changed. He went on to study music, release his first album, and perform on national stages. Every year he got a birthday card from Amanda and little Hope, who always signed her name in crayon. And every time someone asked Malik how his music career started, he'd smile and say, "It all began with a flight, a heartbeat, and a moment. That taught me what it means to show up." And he never stopped showing up.